The Third Man is a 1949 film noir set in Vienna. It is considered by many institutions to be the greatest British film of all time. It stars Joseph Cotten in a phenomenal lead performance. However, everybody's talking, of course, and everybody will always talk about Orson Welles' turn in this film. I won't tell you who he plays because it's a major spoiler, but just know Orson Welles is phenomenal in this film. All this and more on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Yes, it is the end of Noir-Vember, a somewhat successful arc, it is safe to say. And with me, of course, is my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, how have you found Noir-Vember?
Noir-Vember has probably been the most successful. I don't even think probably, it's definitely been the most successful
Yeah.
we've done so far from a purely numbers point of view, an engagement point of view. So yeah, thanks everyone for all the comments, all the watches of the videos, all the likes. It goes a long way, and we're starting to pick up some steam, I think, on the channel, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's gas because I got into a habit in September. We got our monthly analytics on YouTube Studio, and it was like a graph of all of our views for September versus all the months prior, and September dwarfed all the months prior. So I posted it on the story, and I was like, great to see that the channel's doing well. Lo and behold, in October then,
Halloween.
same again. After Film Club, we got the monthly analytics, and October was dwarfing September, which was dwarfing the rest. And it was like, oh, wow, great to see that we're moving along. Yeah, November's going to be a fun one because, yeah, we've obviously, after the Universal Monster Month, which, again, just boosted the channel, dwarfing the previous months. Now we've Noir-Vember, which has broken basically every record we have on the channel when it comes to viewers, subscribers, and everything. And it's great to see so many new faces. It's great to see so many people commenting
lots of
frequently
comments
now, which is amazing. I'd love if we could continue that and we build a bit of an old film community in the comments. That'll be class. And who knows? Because obviously with the traction we're on, who knows? Whenever we hit 500 subscribers, we get a whole load of perks that we can use as a channel. That's something that we're going to aspire to, but we'll talk about that in the future. But in the meantime, we just want to build a cool little classic film community in the comments. And today's classic film is, of course, The Third Man. Shane, what did you know about The Third Man prior to this week?
Yeah, I'd seen The Third Man once before. Absolutely loved it. One of the best noirs, I think, in my opinion. I know some people actually are a bit more down on it than I would probably have imagined, but at the same time, it is still one of the most famous and popular noirs. I think for one thing, and you touched on Orson Welles, but I think the reveal, there's a certain reveal which we'll get into, but I think it's up there with one of the great reveals in cinema history because just the way it's lit, the way it's shot, the way it's acted and performed from both actors. Yeah, we'll talk about it and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that scene. But really, the whole film, I think there's like a sprightliness and an energetic feel to the whole film, mainly because
it's that goddamn zither. It's that zither.
It's someone on Letterboxd described it as like a SpongeBob sounding score, and actually,
so the score to this film is it's a instrument called a zither.
Yeah.
And the theme to this was so catchy that it was number one in the US Billboard charts for buying in store for 11 weeks in a row. This random ass song played on a random ass instrument called a zither was number one in the charts, which is amazing to me. But it's so catchy. It's very catchy. SpongeBob, yeah.
And
very SpongeBob.
Like I said, it gives the film like an energetic feel where maybe some other noirs, obviously, they have a much more brooding, ominous kind of foreboding feel to it. This gives it an energetic kind of feel to it. So many directors name this as one of their favourite films ever. Martin Scorsese, Akira Kurosawa, plenty more where that came from. I think it's in a way, it's because it's shooting in real post-war Vienna in the actual city. There's a Billy Wilder film called A Foreign Affair, which also shoots, I think, in post-war Berlin, if I'm not mistaken. And similar to that, like, you're seeing the real rubble, you're seeing the real kind of decadence of the city in post-war Vienna. In this case, you're seeing the real consequences that the war had, and it gives the film a much more kind of dark vibe, also while also still kind of having this mystery, this noir mystery,
Yeah.
in the center of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, so a quick spoiler-free review, because this is a film that you really need to be like careful with spoilers, because there's some twists and there's some turns in this one for sure. This film is absolutely amazing in my opinion. It's beautifully shot. It's got a lot of great dry British humor. There's so many random cops have so many random one-liners. Like there's one guy who is like arresting a woman, and it's like it should be a real tense emotional scene, and he's like, "It's just protocol, ma'am," and she's like, "I don't even know what protocol is," and he's like, "I don't know what it means either, love." Like there's so many just little quips and one-liners and dry humor in a ultimately very, very dark film. Like the actual plot of this, as it unravels, becomes darker and darker to a point where the subject matter we're dealing with is kind of as dark as it can get. Again, no spoilers. And of course, there is the incredible turn from Orson Welles. I don't know who coined the phrase the Orson Welles role, and we'll get into it more whenever we touch on his performance in the actual review. But essentially, the term the Orson Welles role came from this film because he has very few scenes. He got paid lots and lots of money. He got all the good dialogue, and he got all the credit because he was so amazing in it. Hence, the Orson Welles role. And yeah, Orson Welles, believe it or not, kills it in the Orson Welles role. But we'll talk about that whenever we deal with his character in the actual film review.
It's funny
because
sorry to cut across it. It's funny about that because David O. Selznick, who produced the film, he was kind of on the fence about having Orson Welles because Orson Welles had a couple of box office underperformances, bombs. Some people would probably call them as well, maybe a bit harsh. But Selznick kind of wanted someone a bit more, with a bit more of a guaranteed box office draw. But Carol Reed kind of put his foot down and said, "No, Orson Welles is the guy for this." And also, Joseph Cotten had worked with Orson Welles a couple of times before, so I think the fact that those two guys had such a rapport is important in the film because you're kind of drawing on the weight of a long-lasting friendship that these two characters are supposed to have had. So when they do interact, if they do interact, you're actually like you can tell that they're really familiar with each other. So I think it's great casting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Carol Reed put his foot down for another incident in the film, but we'll talk about that when we talk about it because it's kind of the ending of the film, let's just say. But we'll talk about that when we talk about that. Yeah, I think it's probably worth just getting into this film straight away. It's so great. I actually just love this film. And yeah, we open with that zither playing, and we get a random monologue, a narrator. It doesn't happen for the rest of the film. It's just kind of interesting. Basically setting the scene. Post-war Vienna is divided into four different countries are basically overlooking the place. None of them communicate with each other. The police are constantly kind of running into each other, causing confusion. And a guy called Harry Lime has offered his now broke friend a job in Vienna. That friend is Holly Martins, played by Joseph Cotten. And Holly Martins is on his way to Vienna. He was a pulp novelist. He wrote a couple of books some of the people in this film have heard of. The big one is The Lone Rider of Santa Fe.
Yeah, moderately successful books, but not famous or anything.
Yeah, nothing crazy, but his fans do appreciate them, and he has a couple of fans in Vienna. And he goes to Vienna, gets off the train, he goes to where he believes to be Harry Limes' apartment, when the porter in the building, a neighbour of Harry Limes, starts speaking to him in German, and he hasn't a clue what he's saying. He asks him to speak in English, and he's like, "Oh, you just missed Mr. Lime by about 10 minutes. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, "Yes, he just left 10 minutes ago in a coffin." He's dead. He got hit by a car.
I love how cheerful
He died.
this guy delivers the news. Like, it's not somber. You
Yeah.
expect it to be like kind of somber, but he's like, he died 10 minutes ago. Like,
Yeah, he got hit by a car outside. He's very dead. You just missed him actually, but in his coffin. So Holly Martins goes to the funeral of his friend who he was coming over to work for, in which we see a couple of shady-ish looking people and a woman played by Alida Valli.
who we've covered on the podcast before in the Paradine case, which the less said about that, the better.
Yes, which is a shame. I think I mentioned it in the Paradine case episode because she is a class underrated actress.
She's very good in this.
No gender. She is fantastic in Eyes Without a Face. She's fantastic in Suspiria. She's really good in Suspiria, actually. She plays a woman at this funeral, and we don't really see much of her. We just kind of see Holly Martins getting a few dirty looks from some of the men, and he kind of says nothing and walks away when a man catches up to him and offers him a ride back into town. They get in the car, and as they leave the funeral and they drive back into town, they actually pass this woman played by Alida Valli walking, but they don't stop. And Calloway asks him if he was a friend of Lime's. He said, yeah. And he said, are you here long? And he's like, no. Like, he's literally just off the plane, actually. So Calloway says, right, we'll go for a drink. And they do go for a drink to a local tavern. And it's there that we find out that the man, Calloway, who offered him a lift, is a policeman. And he was investigating Harry Lime for racketeering. And this racketeering actually involved a couple of murders. To quote the Invisible Man, we'll just do a couple of murders. And then whenever Joseph Cotten's character gets quite pissed off about these allegations against his childhood best friend, another man steps in by the name of Sergeant Payne, who was M in the James Bond movies.
Oh, really?
And he steps in and he first of all recognizes Holly Martins as an author whenever he hears the name, and then he agrees to take him back to his hotel room where he kind of accidentally sets him up with a job in Austria.
Yeah, he's a fan of Holly's work. But yeah, Holly then, when he gets back to the apartment, he calls a guy called Baron Kurtz, who's a friend of Harry Lime's, and he arranges to meet him. So they say, look, there's also, he gets into another conversation with this guy who kind of is like, he's involved in literature to some degree, and this guy says, doesn't know who Holly is, but as soon as he hears he's a writer, he pretends to know his work. Kind of funny seeing. And he's like, oh yeah, you should do a book signing, you should do a book event where you talk about your work, because this guy's just looking for a reason to hold a book event to get a few punters in the door. So Holly, I beg your pardon, says, yeah, okay, we'll do that one of the nights. So then, as agreed, Kurtz and Holly meet, and Kurtz says everyone's involved in some shady stuff since the war to make ends meet, because there's no other way to make a living in this city otherwise. But clearly he's shady as hell, this guy, because he's just looking shifty and shady, and he's giving non-answers and half-answers to everything that Holly is saying to him. So then Kurtz...
And he looks like John Malkovich.
He does look a bit like Malkovich for sure. But Kurtz then explains what happened with Harry, because he was one of two other people. So he was one of one other people. Sorry, he was one of two people who was with Harry when Harry died. Got it right eventually. So he gives his version of what he thinks happened, or what in his opinion happened. But then Holly catches him out on a lie, because Kurtz said that he died instantly. But then he said, he was telling us to look after you when he got here. So Holly's like, well, which one was it? Did he die instantly, or did he give you advice? Like, did it take him a few minutes? And Kurtz kind of knows he's caught out, so he's kind of again giving half truths and half answers. So he says, look, the other person who was with us at the time was a Romanian person named Mr. Popescu, but he's left Vienna, so you're not going to be able to talk to him. So then he says that the girl at the funeral can't help you either. He seems to be hiding quite a lot. Then Holly then goes to the Joseph Theatre, because Kurtz had let slip that that's where the woman worked. So Holly's like, look, I might as well just talk to this woman, see if she knows anything. So he goes to the Joseph Theatre to visit. Anna is her name. And in the middle of the performance, she's like, okay, I'll talk to you at the end when this whole thing is done. So at the end of it, they get to talking, and she says that Kurtz brought us some money when Harry died. And she said that the inquest said that the accident wasn't the driver's fault, meaning Harry had a driver. They said that wasn't his fault. But then she wonders herself whether it really was an accident. And then, the score then starts to ramp up. And, because it's the first inkling that Holly has, I think. Well, he had kind of had one or two little suspicions. But the fact that someone else is kind of on the same page as him makes him think that maybe it wasn't an accident after all.
Yeah, and so two things. One, there's a very funny line earlier in the film where Holly first kind of says he's convinced that Calloway, the head policeman, is trying to just pin this whole racketeering thing on a dead man because it's the easy thing to do. And when the man, when he's leaving with Payne, the first time asks him what he's doing and what the Lone Rider of Santa Fe is about, he was like, "Oh, the Lone Rider of Santa Fe, it's about a man who hunts down a sheriff for pinning something on his best friend, and I'm about to do something similar." And the guy turns to Payne and is like, "Oh, what does he mean by that?" And Payne just goes, "I don't know, sounds anti-British though." And also, Schmidt, the woman, says, Anna, that another man was also at the scene. He just happened to be walking by, and it was actually Harry's doctor, Dr. Winkler, not Winkler, who identified that he was dead at the scene. So, he can't shake the fact that basically any character in his life, bar Anna, was at the scene of his death, and it was just too big of a coincidence. It's really weird. And when she says she also thinks it's weird, that's when he's like, right, okay, I really do need to look into this.
Yeah, 100%. So Holly and Anna then go to visit the witness who saw the crash, obviously the person who's the neighbour of Harry Limes.
The porter from the beginning.
Yeah, the porter from the apartment block. And the man said there's no way that he could have said something because he died at once. In his opinion, there's no way that Harry could have said anything.
Yeah, he said the way his head was, he was clearly dead on impact. Like, there's no way that man was talking.
And he says that he didn't give evidence at the inquest, but that there was a third man who carried Harry's body. Spooky. He says,
name of the film. The Third Man.
He says he
and
didn't
now
get
we
a good
know
look.
why the film is called that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a third man, not just Kurtz and Popescu. There's a third man apparently. He says he didn't get a good look at this person, but he's positive, he's 100% sure that there was a third man. And he could have been just about anybody because, again, he didn't get a good look at the guy. And then a young boy arrives as Holly and the man argue. Holly's trying to get this porter, to go to the inquest or to go to the police and say what he knows, that there was a third man, but the man is adamant that he's not going to do that because he doesn't know what would achieve. But then a young boy arrives and he's kind of witnessing it with a bit of curiosity in his face. But we'll come back to that young boy then. So then later, Holly and Anna, they're walking around, but then he's walking her home. And when they get to her apartment building, turns out the police are ransacking her apartment because they think she's up to something. They think has something to hide. But that's the first time we kind of see the rubble and the dilapidated buildings and the kind of decadence that the city has become because, it's kind of in a shambles. The kind of place is in a bad state.
Yeah, it's like there's like a weird beauty about it. Like it looks incredible, but obviously,
really,
it's a city that's been heavily bombed. Yeah. And it's tragic, but there is something both about the way it's been shot and just the architecture itself that's just beautiful. And you can tell that it's beautiful even though there are buildings everywhere that have been absolutely pummeled, because what is still standing still looks amazing. Even the hallway to Anna's apartment looks like incredible. It looks like something out of like a pristine church. And they go up to Anna's apartment because her next door neighbor is a real one. She hasn't a word of English, but she speaks German, and she's telling Anna, I tried to get him out, like she's there for Anna. She's this old woman, and even when they go up, she's like squaring up to police, being like, who are you, like, to whatever, but in German. And they demand, Calloway's there, Sergeant Payne is there, and they demand, which is actually a pretty funny thing, that his name is Sergeant Payne, but he's like the friendliest cop in the film. He's such a friendly man, yet his name is Sergeant Payne.
I feel like we've had 4 or 5 films lately where there's a character with a surname Payne. Where the Sidewalk Ends, there was another one at least as well. At least another one's weird, kind of a run of Paynes.
It's like it's
It's a
It's an
common enough
easy way.
surname. Yeah,
I feel like it's an easy way of giving a character a strong name that's a real name.
yeah,
Is the surname Payne, spelled Payne?
yeah,
It's a real easy way of giving a character a strong name
yeah.
because it's a very
100%.
strong surname. In fairness, and yeah, so they go into the apartment. They're all there, and the police who are kind of ransacking the place demand that they get Anna's papers, and they get Payne to read through all of her personal letters. Meanwhile, yeah, Holly is just on Calloway. He's like, "You're trying to pin this on my best friend who's dead, and I'm not letting this happen to my friend." Then in confidence, Anna actually tells Holly that she is illegally in the country. She is Czechoslovakian. Her papers are forged, and she could be in real danger. And he's like, "Don't worry, I'll figure this all out." But they still say that they're going to take her away. So she is in trouble, especially the Russian police, who are probably the most prominent police in this besides the British police,
Yeah.
because they are all about deporting people. And once they get a whiff of someone who's in there illegally, they're going to deport them.
Isn't
So
it
they're
also
also
because
ransacking the place.
Russia, if I have my history right, Russia was still USSR at the time. So
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia, obviously, as it was at the time, yeah, I think that was part of the USSR. Could be mistaken about that, but maybe not. But they again, yeah, they're if basically what I'm saying is like they would have a vested interest in anyone who's there illegally, especially from a kind of a nearby country. They're all about, yeah, like you said, deporting someone from those places.
Yeah. So the Russians are all over her, and they do take her away, but as she's leaving, he just gets her to remind him of the name of the doctor who just so happened to walk past the scene. Dr. Winkler, not Winkler. So what does he do? He goes straight to him and he says, "Hey, Dr. Winkler," and straight away the guy hates him then. He's like, "It's Winkler." But he asks him to recount what happened at Harry Lime's death, and he gives the same spiel that we got already from the barn, and he asks him, "In your opinion, do you think it was definitely an accident?" And he said, "I can't even give an opinion, because what happened, regardless, the body would still fall the same way. Like if he got hit by a car on purpose or on accident, his body would still look the same
The
way."
injuries would have been the same.
And Winkler really hates this line of questioning from Holly Martins. He makes him real uncomfortable and doesn't want him in his place anymore.
Yeah, meanwhile, Major Calloway is interrogating Anna back at the station. He had already said that he doesn't care if there was a third man because he's only happy that Harry's dead, which is kind of a shitty thing to say. But yeah, he's trying to get Anna to flip in exchange for potentially helping her stay in the country. So he's like, "Right, help us find an accomplice of Harry's called Joseph Harbin. This is a guy that Harry was working with and has shady dealings." Then Holly then goes to visit Anna. We cut to the next scene. We don't know if she has spoken to Calloway about this or not, but they're chatting away anyway, kind of flirting or whatever. And then Kurtz is at the bar. They don't see Kurtz, but Kurtz sees them, and his face absolutely drops when he sees it. And then he's with another man, Popescu, and he's like, "Oh, have a look at this." So then Popescu sidles over with Kurtz, and he's like, "This is what happened." Holly's like, "I thought you had left the country." That's what Kurtz here said. And he's like, "Oh no, I returned. I came back." So Popescu again, he's trying to tell Harry what happened, or Holly what happened. But again, Holly's not believing him. He thinks something's wrong. And Popescu was like, "There was no third man. There was no third man." But he's clearly disturbed by the idea that Holly has the idea in his head that there was a third man because, for whatever reason, he's not too happy about that.
Yeah, he also obviously didn't get the memo that they were being slightly honest about Harry, because when he asks him, "Oh, do you think Harry could have been involved in any sort of racketeering?" He's like, "No way. Harry was a clean-cut guy." And he's like, "Well, the Baron actually said that he probably was involved." And he was like, "Well, that's his opinion." So you could tell he's already backpedaling as well. He kind of chokes on his whiskey and pretends that it's because he shouldn't drink whiskey because it's too acidic for him or something. But you can tell that Popescu's on the back foot. And then he asks him about your man Joseph, who we just saw Calloway ask Schmidt about, and he denies knowing this man Joseph. cut to the next day and he's on the phone. He's like, we need to meet at the bridge. Yeah, Popescu's organising something, because you could tell that whole interaction spooked him. So he meets a bunch of guys on a bridge. And then the next thing we know, we're back outside of Harry's apartment, but downstairs. And Holly is shouting up to the porter, the neighbour, I really think you should go to the police about this. And the man is like, listen, right, fine. I didn't actually tell you the full story. Let me just tell you the full story later. I'm busy now. Come over tonight and I'll tell you about it. And he's like, all right, okay, no problem. And then, excellently shot.
Yeah.
We're inside the man's apartment and he closes the window back over and he turns around and that goddamn zither kicks in and the man's face just drops. We don't see what's in his apartment, but it's pretty obvious what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And we never see this porter again.
No. So yeah, Holly goes back to Anna's apartment and visits her, and they start to reminisce about the kind of times they each had with Harry, the good times they had with Harry. Then they go to the porter's apartment as was arranged, but they see like a whole commotion at the just outside the building. They're obviously not sure what's going on, so they go over, and Anna kind of translates to Holly what's happened because they're all speaking German, and she's like, the porter, he's been murdered. And then the young boy from earlier who kind of witnessed the altercation between the porter and Holly, he says that he thinks that, well, he says that he's the murderer, he's the one who did it.
Yeah, he just tells this whole angry mob in German, and it's actually a pretty funny scene.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because Holly's totally oblivious because he hasn't a lick of German in him. He doesn't understand anything that they're all saying, and they're all just turning and looking at him whilst he's trying to get a good look at like the body being brought out.
Yeah, this poor boy obviously puts two and two together, saw like an argument between the two of them the day beforehand or 2 days beforehand, and he just got the wrong end of the stick. But that doesn't the angry mob obviously don't know this, so they start to kind of chase after him because they think he's after kind of murdering someone. So he goes into a movie theatre to hide with Anna, and then a little while later, then a driver picks Holly up from the hotel. He managed to kind of escape the clutches of this angry mob, so he goes to the hotel, and it turns out that a driver kind of he ushers Holly into a car. He starts speeding along super fast, and Holly is shitting himself. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks He thinks
Great scene.
Yeah, he thinks that maybe someone's kidnapping him, or he's about to go to his death or whatever. Then they pull up to this building, and just as it looks like maybe some shit about to go down, he realizes it's the book events that he had agreed to participate in, where he's obviously going to speak about his published books at this book event. But then there's a funny scene. Then it's not going so well, so it's pretty clear that people start to walk out unimpressed by what he's saying because he doesn't have much literary knowledge, to be honest. They're asking him about James
they're asking him
Joyce.
about James Joyce and the contemporary novel, and they're asking him questions
inspirations
about,
and stuff, and then he gives an answer. I think
he's just getting grilled.
Yeah, like he doesn't. It's pretty clear that it's very limited literary knowledge, where maybe it's just similar kind of Western novels and similar kind of similar cowboy kind of novels as to what he writes. That's pretty much all he actually reads. So people start to walk out. But then Popescu arrives, and him and Holly then start to have this kind of layered conversation. They're talking about one thing, but really they're talking about Harry. So he says, I have this idea, Holly says, about the third man, and he starts to talk about, like, basically he's threatening Popescu with the idea that he knows that Harry's death, well, there's something going on with Harry's death that they're keeping from him. So Popescu has a couple of goons by his side, and what do you want to take over there? Like they have a couple of
it's one of the few great chase sequences in this film. First, they go up this wacky looking spiral staircase where Holly manages to get into this attic. He turns on the light because he thinks that there's a person in the corner, but it's actually a parrot, and the parrot bites him. Then he jumps out the window, and the guys follow after him. But because he jumped out the window next to where there was a building that had obviously been decimated, he just kind of slides down the rubble, and he runs through the streets of Vienna. We get some amazing shots of the streets of Vienna, and Martins manages to get to Callaway, to the police headquarters, where he Callaway fills him in on why it is that he hates Harry Lime, Martin's his childhood best friend, so much. Harry Lime stole a lot of penicillin when there was a penicillin shortage, diluted it
From
to
military
sell more
hospitals
of
as
it.
well. Yeah, so
Yeah, from military hospitals, diluted it so that he could sell more of it, and sold it to the hospitals where there was people suffering from gangrene, and he even sold it to children's hospitals.
yeah.
And he just said that the lucky children died because the effects as to whatever it was that Harry and his cronies diluted the penicillin with sent the people either crazy or gave them a really long and painful death.
Yeah, it just wasn't,
or
at
just
the very
killed them
least,
instantly.
at the very least, it just wasn't effective enough. So, at the very least, they're still living with just as much pain as they were beforehand.
Yeah.
If not, like you said, worse. Like if
Yeah.
not further side effects and further kind of issues that would arise.
Yeah, like he said that there's a whole institution now dedicated to the children who are suffering from the mental effects of what has happened to them. And he just can't believe it. So, yeah, we basically get a montage of the heaps and heaps of evidence. We also find out that this man, Joseph, who was mentioned earlier, was basically Lime's go-to guy for actually getting the penicillin in the first place. And he was actually a pretty high up guy in the health world in Vienna. So
He's gone missing.
like it was
yeah.
crazy for him to do the same thing as well for a man of such a high and important position to be taking advantage of these people. And yeah, Holly Martin's, after this wave of information and evidence, just apologizes to Calloway, and Calloway also apologizes to him because Calloway recognizes that he either should have been more forthcoming with this information or should have maybe gone a little easier on Holly Martins the whole time. But the two apologize to each other, and Martins agrees that the following morning he is just going to fly home because the whole time Calloway says, yeah, no, I have a plane ticket for you whenever you want to get out of this country. Trust me, I'll organize it. So Martins goes to the Casanova Club, which is the club that they've kind of been visiting the whole time throughout this film. And yeah, he gets quite shit-faced in the Casanova Club, it's safe to say.
I think
he gets a load of flowers.
Pretty obvious that has an alcohol issue throughout this film, which on release wasn't obviously particularly popular that you would present your protagonist this way. But I think the film has obviously aged quite a lot because, like you said, it's not the first time he's gotten shit-faced. The second scene I think we see of him after he finds out Harry's death, he gets shit-faced with Calloway. And it's not, it's pretty obvious that he does have an alcohol issue.
Yeah, certainly a dependency on it.
Yeah.
And he goes straight to Anna's apartment with the flowers, and she asks, did you go to Calloway? What did you tell him? And he was like, I didn't actually tell him much. He told me everything. I know everything now about Harry. Do you know? And she was like, yeah, I also actually saw Calloway today. And then we get one of the most impossible and impressive shots I've genuinely ever seen in a film where they're having a conversation. They're a few floors up in this apartment block, and the camera goes between them. Somehow it then goes through the flowers on her windowsill, goes all the way out into the streets below, and we see a figure walk in and then go into a door, like a, what do you call it?
Like an arch.
Like a door frame. Yeah. And like a porch.
Yeah, exactly.
A porch. And meanwhile, Anna's cat actually leaves as well, and the cat goes straight down to the man, which is interesting. But we go back into the apartment then, and they're basically saying their goodbyes because, yeah, he kind of alludes to the fact that he is sort of in love with her, and she's like, well,
I'm in love with her.
You need to go find yourself a woman.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he kind of realizes, that's never happening, but I just wanted to say goodbye before I left. And he kind of goes out and he wanders the streets quite drunkenly, and he spots the man who's in the archway, and he kind of starts hurling abuse at him. He's like, you're a shit spy. I could tell that you were telling me the whole time. You're a terrible spy. come out, you idiot.
Show yourself.
And he's like shouting at the top of his lungs to a point where this woman up above gets pissed and opens her windows, and she has all her big lights on. She opens the shutters and she starts shouting at him in German. And then the light from her apartment shines down on the man in the archway's face.
Yeah,
and it is Orson motherfucking Welles playing Harry Lime, who is not dead. He is still alive. The goddamn zither starts playing.
Yeah.
We push into his face. Orson Welles gives us that little smirk.
It's a smirk, and also he's not also sure how to play it because he doesn't know if Holly saw him, or he doesn't know how to play it in case Holly did see him. So you've seen all that on his face at the same time, but man, it's a fucking iconic shot. Like I said, it's arguably the greatest reveal of a character in cinematic history. Like,
I think it is I personally think it is, and I also, from here on out, Orson Welles as Harry Lime is one of my favorite movie characters ever.
William Friedkin.
And he is in 3 scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, William Friedkin.
Because there's not long left of this movie.
An amazing director by himself. He says that Harry Lime is one of the greatest characters of all time because everything you know about Harry Lime, even once we've established that he's still alive, which we have, everything pretty much that we know about him is because it's of what other characters say about him. Like, he's not... You don't really see him do anything shady in the whole film. You don't hear him talk about what he's done, apart from maybe one brief moment on a certain Ferris wheel later on. Everything you know about him, the reputation he has, the things he's done, kind of all this shady, bad stuff that he's done, who he is as a person, everything you know is because of what other characters say about him and the way they view him as a character.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. It's so good.
Yeah, so then a car comes by as Martins recognizes him and he shouts Harry, and as the car goes by, he's gone. But just the way the echo of the streets are, and the streets are obviously empty,
He's able to hear it.
Holly kind of knows where to go, and he runs after the echo and footsteps, and he chases him. Again, just every chase scene in this film is shot beautifully, probably just because Vienna is a beautiful place, but also because there are so many Dutch angles in this film, and it works so well.
Amazing.
And he chases him basically to this like town square almost, where he vanishes into thin air. So then we fast forward a little while into the future, where Holly has come back to the town square with Calloway and Payne.
Yeah.
And he basically says, I chased him to here, and he disappeared into thin air. And I know you guys don't believe me because I'm drunk.
Yeah, Calloway and Payne
like,
just
no, we don't.
Yeah, no, that's not a case. But then, just as they kind of are about to walk away and say, "Look, you've had a few too many here, pal," they spot like a almost looks like a phone booth, but it's not really a phone booth. It's like kind of. But then they know, because they obviously work in the city, that it's actually a winding staircase down into the city sewers. So they open it and they walk down the staircase into the sewers. And Calloway has this great line where he says, "We should have dug deeper than a grave."
Yeah, such a good line.
Amazing line. So fast forward again, probably an hour or two later, where they've decided to get an emergency exhumation of the body. So they dig up the body and they look inside and they realise it's not Harry Lime. It is Joseph Harbin, who has been missing this whole film also. Who they assumed that Harry had done away with, or they assumed that maybe him and Harry were in cahoots for whatever reason. It's Joseph Harbin, who clearly has been murdered by Harry and his cronies.
I was going to say, I love the fact that there's no in-your-face monologue of, "Oh, Harry Lime, you're the third man." Yeah. It's like, no, Carol Reed, the director, just trusts us to piece together that, okay, it's this guy Joseph who got hit by the car, and the third man who helped him carry him. Yes. Again, part of the Orson Welles role, where the film's literally named after you, even though you're in 3 scenes, the third man is, of course, Harry Lime, who picks him up, and the 3 of them brought him over to fake Harry Lime's death, basically. Yeah. But all of this, we don't see. This is all Carol Reed trusting the audience to piece that together themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So then Anna is taken into custody by international police because at the start of the film we are told obviously the British, the French, the Americans, and the Russians all have their own section of Vienna. But then there's in the city centre, there's like an international place. There's an international kind of place where they all kind of coordinate a little bit as to what way they're going to work, how to police the city. So she's taken into custody by international police, which obviously means that she's probably going to be deported. The chances are. But then she finds out that Harry is still alive, and then Holly visits Kurtz and Winkel, and he says he wants to see Harry just the next day. Kurtz is up in his balcony. Kurtz and Winkler up in a balcony in Kurtz's place, and they're looking down. And Kurtz is trying to again pretend that what are you talking about? Harry is dead. You're crazy. But Holly's like, look, I know he's alive. I saw him. You tell him. And then Kurtz is like, oh, why don't you come upstairs? But Holly's like, that's clearly a trap. You're just gonna murder me when I get up there. He's like, I'm gonna go all the way over there to that carnival, and you tell Harry to meet me there. By himself. If I see anyone else coming, it's like, I know it's a setup. So he goes over, stays by the Ferris wheel for a while, and then he starts to see a figure in the distance just walking towards him. And we again, for the second time now, we see Harry Lime, and he has like a boisterous kind of joyful energy because he's like, he's happy to see his old friend again. Yeah, and he's clearly full of life. This guy, like a shady guy that he is, he clearly has a zest for life. And they obviously get in the Ferris wheel, and some shit happens.
Yeah, the Ferris wheel is shot beautifully as well. Amazing. Like there's so many shots of this Ferris wheel that look amazing. And Orson Welles in the goddamn Orson Welles role. Apparently he had a lot of input into his own dialogue in this scene, which is genuinely some of the best acting from a bit part character, shall we say, probably in the history of cinema. Orson Welles kills it in this scene. He basically, first of all, he talks to Holly as in like, oh, it's good to see you. Yeah, no, I'm like suffering from indigestion. Yeah, like trying to make small talk as if nothing had happened. And then Holly's like, I know everything you've done. I've been speaking to Calloway. And then we get a totally different version of Harry Lime.
His demeanor shifts.
Where, he gives us an insane couple of lines. The biggest one is when they get to the top of the Ferris wheel and Martins is grilling him, obviously, for the amount of innocent people who've died. And Harry Lime just opens the door of the Ferris wheel and gets Holly to look down and says, what would be the price that you would be willing to receive if one of those dots down there stopped moving forever?
Yeah, it's crazy actually now that you mention the dots. Like the way he speaks about people, like is really, it's like he doesn't see them as humans or as real people. They're just people who he can make a buck off of. Like
they're numbers.
He just sees them as numbers on a paycheck or numbers. He just sees them as a way for him to make money and doesn't care about their humanity or their it's really dark stuff the way he actually views humanity.
And he says like, multiply now how many of those dots you would be willing to let stop moving forever. That's all I did. And then Holly then tells him the police know that you aren't in your grave. They've dug up the grave. And then again Harry Lime switches again. And he switches into a different character. And then he becomes far more nice because he was alluding then to the fact that like, I could just throw you off this Ferris wheel right now and shoot you. And if you fall from this height, they're not going to check for a bullet. Like, if you fall from this height, there won't be a bullet to find inside of you, basically. And whenever he then says, oh, but the police actually know that you're not dead, pal, he switches again and he becomes very friendly again. And the Ferris wheel starts to come back down again. It's very interesting where, again, it's just genius where you start off on the Ferris wheel and he's all friendly. You get to the top of the Ferris wheel and we get him in his full villainy, and then he comes right the way back down again and back at the bottom again. He's all friendly again. And then he gives, allegedly, this is the monologue where he gave the most sort of input. It's references the cuckoo clock speech, where basically, to try and justify what he's doing, he says to Holly, listen, we need to meet again. Just don't bring the police. and I'll meet you, no problem. You know what the fellow said? In Italy for 30 years under the Borgia said warfare, terror, murder and bloodshed, but they produced Michelangelo, Da Vinci and the Renaissance. In Switzerland they had brotherly love, they had 500 years of democracy and peace, and what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. So long, Holly. And he just kind of skips away.
It's cold.
It is.
It's a cold.
So, and so that was Orson Welles put that in, because only Orson Welles could be like, oh yeah, it's from this really old Hungarian play that I saw once, and I just thought it was really good. Only he would be the guy to do that.
Even if you didn't say that, like I already assumed there was a Welles input anyway, because it's exactly the kind of thing you would see, exactly the kind of line or exactly the kind of monologue you would see in a Welles film. Like I could easily have seen that particular monologue pop up in a Welles directed and Welles written scripted film. Like you said, it's
he's
Welles'
one of a kind
influence all over. 100%. So then Calloway then goes to Holly and he says, look, we're going to need your help in capturing your friend Harry. The Russians then tell Calloway that they want to deport Anna because she's Czechoslovakian. But then Holly says, look, okay, initially he's resistant to the idea of helping the cops. But he's like, right, look, if you can promise me that Anna's not going to be deported, I'll do what you want. I'll help you capture Harry. So then Payne helps Anna hide from the Russians. So they go to a train where they're hoping to store away until the whole thing is over. Get her out of the city, and then they'll bring her back once the deal is done. But then she isn't aware of Holly's plan or Holly's part in this whole plan at the moment. But then she sees Holly walk into the cafe by himself, and she gets off the train. She goes in and confronts him, and she's like, "What are you doing here? I knew you're obviously helping the police. Like, she's like, you've obviously bargained for me in exchange for Harry's life, and I won't let you do it." So she's like, I'm not leaving. This isn't happening. So she eventually wears Holly down, and Holly's like, whatever, I'll just leave town then. Like, I won't be part of this whole thing. So she visits Calloway, or he visits Calloway, I beg your pardon, and he's like, look, she's right. I don't know why I'm getting involved still. It's got nothing to do with me. Just let me get on the plane. So Calloway's like, oh, fair enough then. But look, let me give you a ride. I've popped off somewhere on the way, so let me just give you a ride, and we'll bring you to the airport then. On the way, then Calloway, sneaky guy that he is, he stops off at the hospital.
Yeah.
And he's like, look at all these people here. These are all victims of Harry. They weren't able to get the care that they needed because of his selfishness and his villainy. Are you really going to let this guy get away scot-free? So Holly's just flipping back and forth for a while here, like, okay, I'll help you.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going.
And then we get this really haunting shot of a nurse who has a kid's chart, and she just marks it and puts it down and puts the kid's teddy bear face down on the floor, and we just look at that. And then the next time we see Holly, he's like, right, okay, fine. Yeah, okay, I get the point. Yeah. I'm with you guys. I get it.
Fair enough then. Okay, whatever. Fair enough. I'll help you. So then we cut back to the cafe shot from earlier. Again, incredible cinematography where you're seeing police perched up in like different high spots around the square. Obviously surveilling this whole cafe for Harry's approach. And then Holly's waiting in the cafe, and he's waiting obviously for Harry to arrive. But then Anna arrives again. That wasn't in the plan. So then a man with balloons is walking past. This is funny as well.
Yeah, also not in the plan.
Exactly, not in the plan whatsoever, because he's just pestering them to be like, buy a balloon. They're like, fuck off, get away, shoot. But this guy, fair play to him, persistent salesman, pushy salesman. He's like, he wasn't leaving there until he
manages to sell a balloon. Yeah.
He's like, fair enough, okay.
It's of course it's Sergeant Payne who buys the balloon. He's the one who's like, all right, fine, I'll buy a balloon if you insist.
So they managed to get this guy out of the picture just in the right nick of time, because he almost blew their cover. But then Harry's on top of one of the building, and he's looking down. Similar to the police, he's looking down and he's trying to surveil if he can see any police. And just as he decides that the going looks okay, the coast is clear, he walks in. But just as he walks in, Anna is in a big argument with Holly, and she says, she basically reveals the fact that he's working with the police just as Harry walks in.
Harry, to try and catch him in this trap. Yeah,
exactly. So Harry just about hears the fact that obviously Holly is working with the police. So again, we get another chase scene, probably the fourth chase scene we've gotten in the film, and probably the best chase scene we've gotten.
Definitely the best one.
But this is the best chase scene.
with this chase scene, again, it's the Orson Welles role. So he refused to do any shots in the act. So everything here is shot on location, except for when Orson Welles is running through
Yeah, it's in
the sewers, because he made them make a studio because he didn't like the smell of the sewers. So, can you tell me, Shane, if you know this already, then I'm sure you are, who stepped in as Orson Welles' body double for the shots that they actually did shoot in the sewers in Vienna?
I'm not aware of who it was. No.
It is the assistant director of this film,
Oh, nice.
Guy Hamilton, who directed the James Bond films.
Nice. Fair play.
Yes.
But yeah, no,
So
I knew
he
about the
stepped
fact
in,
that-
obviously, before his big break with Dr. No as the assistant director here, and he's the man who we see running through the sewers of Vienna.
I can't say that I blame Wells, to be honest. Like, I think he wasn't necessarily the picture of health, especially in his later years. So maybe he already had some issues, and he's like, I'm not getting those kind of toxins in my body. So I was like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, the fucking size of some of the rats in the background. Did you see them?
No,
Like they're the size of like small cats.
do you know also the police officers? A lot of the police officers that are extras that we'll get onto the chase scene, but that are chasing Harry Lime. A lot of them are actually Vienna off-duty Vienna officers, police officers at the time, because they didn't have the money.
Class.
So they were just like, fuck it, we'll just ask these guys if they want to come in on their day off.
Yeah.
And a lot of them did. A lot of them like, yeah, fuck it, I'll be in the film. So yeah, fair play.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get this chase sequence. It's shot beautifully.
Yeah.
There's so many iconic shots. The one for me is the one with the tunnel that's like really well lit, and it's all like cobblestone the whole way around as Harry is being chased by the police. We get loads of mad shots of like people diving through like waterfalls and stuff, trying to catch him as
It's a
he
sick location.
runs around.
The location, like you could,
the location's amazing.
you could build a set for like a big blockbuster that would be shot like in modern, like in film today. You could build a big set for fucking whatever, tens of
And it would
millions,
not look nearly as good as
and
this.
it wouldn't look nearly as good or as realistic because it literally is the real sewers of Vienna, and the way it's lit, the way it's lit, and the way it's shot is perfect.
Yeah, and Harry gets chased around. As I said, this is actually a somewhat long chase sequence with not much dialogue, but yeah, there's so many great shots. And eventually, Holly does catch up to him, and he shouts out for him, and Harry shouts like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And then Sergeant Payne comes, and he's like, "Holly, get away from him. He's dangerous." And yeah, Harry Lime shoots Sergeant Payne, unfortunately. And then as he tries to escape, Calloway manages to catch up and get a shot off on Harry, which is a bit of justice for him. He manages to get his shot in. And then whenever they check on Payne, Payne's keeled over. It's safe to assume he's dead.
He's dead, yeah.
Yeah. And therefore, Holly's like, right, he takes Payne's gun and he chases after Harry. Harry literally gets fingertips away from safety. His fingertips are on the grate that he's about to move. And yeah, Holly catches up with him. They share a glance. Calloway then off camera shouts, "Holly, don't take any chances. The man's dangerous. Shoot if you see him." They have one last look at each other, and then we just get a shot of the sewer.
And we just hear
Bang.
a gunshot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's the funeral. A great bit of mirroring now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so at the actual funeral of Harry, not the one the fake funeral from earlier, yeah, it turns out that Harry was killed by Holly, and Calloway and Holly are driving along, and Calloway looks like he's going to be dropping Holly off at the airport. He is
Far less people at his real funeral, I might add.
yeah, far less. But Calloway, obviously, he's about to drop Holly off. He's finally leaving Vienna, it would look like, and he tells Holly, look, I'm going to try and help Anna if she lets me, but there's no saying that she will let me. But then he sees Anna, who was at the funeral. Holly sees Anna, and he's kind of thinking for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, again, mirroring the shot from earlier of them driving past her on the street.
Exactly. He's like, look, pull over. So he gets out and he takes his bag. And he's just, again, we just have this kind of wide shot, this wide shot of
So good.
Holly with his bag, just waiting for Anna to come along, and it takes a couple of minutes, to be honest. Probably the best part of a couple of minutes. It takes its time, which is even better. Because he's hoping that Anna will stop, and he's hoping that Anna will let him help her. But she just walks past without even looking at him.
Yeah, that was Carol Reed putting his foot down.
Yeah, was it? So
Yeah, so David O. Selznick and the writer of this, Green, I can't remember his first name.
Graham,
Green.
Graham, maybe.
Graham Greene, you're right, yeah. So Graham Greene, as his treatment for this, wrote a novella. And in the novella, it ends with the two of them
Walking together.
embracing at the end and walking off together. And David O. Selznick loved it. And Carol Reed said, not a fucking hope.
I agree with Carol Reed because...
And yeah, well, Graham Greene since came out and said me and Selznick were totally wrong. Great, and Carol Reed was totally right. It's far more impactful. Carol Reed literally was like, I'm not shooting that ending. I'm shooting my ending, which is the real ending, which is she walks straight past him because she wants nothing to do with him. And yeah, after the fact, Graham Greene said, yeah, me and David O. Selznick were totally wrong, and I am so glad that Carol Reed put his foot down because it is a far better ending than what I wrote in my treatment in my novella.
Yeah, the other one was just your typical Hollywood ending of, right, things all kind of worked out in the end, but like Anna had been rejecting Holly's advances for the whole film, even though she knew he had a pretty major candle for her, and like especially after she knew that Holly killed Harry, like it would have made no sense for her then to do a U-turn and then all of a sudden like embrace him. So yeah, I definitely think it's a perfect ending.
Because she literally says to him at one point in the film that she is pretty much still in love with Harry and that Holly needs to go and get himself a girl. So, like, it would have made no sense for that to have been the ending. But yeah, that is the ending of The Third Man. Yeah, I'm going to get straight into it. 5 stars. One of my favorite films of the 40s. Orson Welles plays one of my favorite characters in film, in Harry Lime. Just the aura, to use a term that kids use these days, around a character in 3 scenes with the best dialogue. He didn't do any of his own stunts, despite only being in 3 scenes. He's basically his face is on the poster of all the posters after the fact. At the time, it was obviously blacked out. Whoever the third man was in the original release posters, but after the fact, he is now the marketing tool of this entire film. Orson Welles as Harry Lime is absolutely incredible. Obviously, also, characters called Harry. But yeah, it's
can't trust those
one of my favorite noirs ever made. Say it again.
You can't trust any Harry.
Yeah, we had another dodgy one, didn't we?
Just every Harry that's popped up in the podcast, I tell you, can't trust them.
Yeah, so far. Yeah, hopefully we cover a good one soon.
Wink, wink.
We will.
Yeah, wink, wink.
And yeah, that's all I'll say. But yeah, it's one of my favorite noirs ever. It's one of my favorite noirs ever. It and Double Indemnity are close to for me. It's beautifully shot on location, which I always prefer. Always to studio shot on location. It's always a good sign of a good noir. Or if you want to go a little bit further back, any of the Italian neo-realist stuff was all shot on location and always looked great as well. Love films that are shot on location, especially in beautiful locations. Like, what a weird and amazing pocket of time to be able to make this film where you actually get to shoot in a blitzed Vienna. Because like Vienna wasn't like this for like much long after this. Like a couple of years later, it was
they started
back and beautiful again. So to get it location like this in a time like this is incredible. It's like a once in a blue moon thing to happen, and I'm so glad that it happened in such an amazing film. Joseph Cotten is fantastic. I think he's really good in this film, as is Alida Valli. Again, very underrated. Just parody in case it's just a shite film. And yeah, ultimately, I think this is amazing. One of the best films, in my opinion, that we've covered on the podcast. And a perfect way to end Noir-Vember. What do you think?
Yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. Absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite noirs for sure. The cinematography is just amazing. Like you said, it just Vienna just looks so real because it is real, because you actually are shooting in the city. Like you really are capturing a moment in time. In a similar way, like I said, to I think it's Berlin, post-war Berlin, which is where Billy Wilder shot A Foreign Affair. You're really capturing, like, there's documentaries that don't have as much of a realistic kind of feel to them because you're literally shooting entire sequences in such such a relocation. Obviously, the score is amazing. Like the score really, if you have a more traditional noir score, I don't think this film works as well. It does give the
No.
film a zip and an energy that a lot of noirs don't have, with good reason. That because noirs are usually kind of more brooding and dark, like I said. But it does kind of help give the film a different tone and a different energy than you'd usually have in a noir. Or Orson Welles, like I said, I'm going to say it again. Arguably the greatest character reveal in cinematic history. There's probably only one or two instances that I can think of that are up there in a similar way, in a similar kind of argument. But yeah, no, it's directed so well. Like I said, there's like 4 different chase sequences, and they're all brilliant. Like, there's none of them don't hold their weight. Yeah, no, it's a brilliant noir, and a great way to round off Noir-Vember, which I think we've had a few cracking films when it comes to noirs, and I think this is
Safe
right
to
up
say,
there.
yeah.
I'll have Double Indemnity above this, but I think this is probably my second favorite noir from the films we covered this month.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, that is Noir-Vember. So yeah, we covered Laura, amazing. Where the Sidewalk Ends, which I think is safe to say is an underrated film.
Pretty
and
good.
I do enjoy when we cover films like Where the Sidewalk Ends, Stalag 17, Sweet Smell of Success.
Less heralded films, yeah.
Yeah. Then obviously we had Double Indemnity, which again, one of my favorite movies ever made. And then last week we did Maltese Falcon, which is great. And I very much liked more on a rewatch. It was your first time watching it. You loved it straight away. And of course, The Third Man. So yeah, safe to say we covered some pretty great films in Noir-Vember.
I think it's a great mix because it's funny. Some people don't think Maltese Falcon like funny isn't, or its humor isn't something that stands out to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was laughing my head off. I thought it was so funny. Like that's why I'm not necessarily sure you can class it as the first noir, even though it is a noir for sure. Like it definitely has its own vibe and its own kind of energy. But Double Indemnity has a very different vibe to that. Laura has a very different vibe to both. This has a very different vibe. Like I think even though they're all noirs, obviously, Noir-Vember, I think we have a nice little mix here of different things that were achieved from the film noir genre, kind of in this kind of 40 to 50 decade, 1940, 1950-ish decade.
Yeah, so that concludes Noir-Vember, and yeah, next week is the beginning of our new mini arc. I don't know, arc? Yeah, they're all arcs at the end of the day. It's a holiday season with the Golden Hour Film Podcast because one of the Fridays is after Christmas, so gotta include that one. And we're covering 4 films again, 4 Fridays next month in the month of December. And we've plenty of stuff planned. I think it's probably safe to just say what we're covering next week to give people time to watch it. Next week we are covering the Kris Kringle, the Edmund Gwenn. Yes, he's back on the podcast after his incredible turn as Rowley. It is Miracle on 34th Street. I've seen it before. I've seen it a couple of times. I believe it's your first time seeing it.
I've seen the 1994 version, but that's my first version.
Which I've actually never seen, which is
okay.
I'll probably have to watch it. Yeah,
we'll dig into that
but
next
I've
week.
seen the Edmund Gwenn one a couple of times. So we're gonna cover that next week, and we've a couple of Christmas movies and then something Christmas adjacent. Then after that, you could call it. I wouldn't go all the way of calling it a Christmas movie, but it's certainly Christmas adjacent. And we will keep you posted as to what those films are on our Instagram, which you can find in the link below, or if you've been listening, it is the Golden Hour Film Podcast. It's pretty easy to find, actually. But that concludes Noir-Vember. Do you want to talk about the films we've watched recently? It's already a pretty long episode, but I've watched a few. Like the ones that I've watched, if I get to make the video... if I get to watch the video... if I get to make the video that I'm looking to make, which should definitely come out before this, I will pretty much cover every film that I've watched recently in that video anyway. So,
exactly.
I'm safe to leave it this week as well, because you'll probably by this point already know about everything that I've watched recently in a special bonus video. But yeah, in the meantime, if you're new here and you are somehow still here over an hour into this episode, that is incredible. Fair play to you. Why don't you let us know? I don't know. Will we give a random thing for them to comment if they've made it to this point?
Mistletoe.
Why don't you... Yeah, comment mistletoe if you are still here at this point. And we will see you next week for Miracle on 34th Street with Edmund Gwen. Go Rowley. Thank you very much. That has been the Golden Hour Film Podcast, and I have been Harry Bailey.
And I've been Shane Mahoney.
And we'll see you next week for the holiday season with the Golden Hour Film Podcast. See you then. Goodbye.